Welcome to a introduction to Zapworks. This will be a series of three, I think, that we'll go over. I don't want to drone on too long, but the overall purpose of this is to give you a view of how Zapworks can be used in an app that students can acquire for free called Zappar. And all the work that you do to build the experience, the augmented reality experience, is kept and it's published. And so anytime, it's semester after semester, it's there. You use the same sort of layout that you had before, it'll be there. So it's a great complement to what I found, at least for myself, to some of the things that I try to do in class to engage these students. So what I would like to point out here, first of all, are the goals. And really, I want to try to communicate what augmented reality is used for in education. It's a hot area, I think. It's going to be around for a long time, so I want to try to convey that. The presentation I posted in Teams, that for the most part, at least in the early parts of that, you can explore on your own. You don't really need me to do this voiceover, but part of that is that there is a video in there that kind of goes over some aspects of how to use augmented reality in education and how it's being used. But why we do that, of course, is the industry. Sort of, if you look at examples in the military, they're tearing engines down, or they use augmented reality glasses to identify parts and how to step by step on how to take an engine apart, for example. So this is just part of what we're going to talk about. Also, I want to show some real-world examples using Zappar, and again, these will be in sections and parts, and so you don't have to sit. You can just watch the part that you're interested in. So I'll show an example using Zappar, and all the way from the beginning as to how do you get started using it. And then as we start to look and examine how to use Zappar, I'm going to show you some of the features of Zappar. So you start off small. You don't have to understand all aspects of the Zapworks environment. All you need are just some of the basics to get started, and you can start using this right away. It's a simple, straightforward engagement tool to enhance the students, especially at the time when they're sitting at home and that sort of thing. This might be a little bit more of something to engage them, perhaps, if you find so. And the levels of Zappar we're going to talk about, but the first one I want to talk about is widgets, and that is without a doubt the fastest way. Within, I can predict 10 minutes, and you can have this up and running, doing something. And then I'll show you what the full capability of just using a widget can do, and then just how to use some of the widgets over and over and over again to your heart's desire. And then I'll start some other videos later on to get into more details of some of the other aspects of this program. So if you look, there's a TED Talk in the presentation. I'm not going to play it here. I just want you to know that this particular talk, if you play it, and there's the link, but it's also in the slide set that's on the Teams site there in the Zappar Teams. This fellow does a really good job articulating some of the aspects of using this in
and more universal
for the university. So it should speak to you. I don't think it'll be a waste of your time. But the transition from handheld augmented reality, like the phones and iPads and all these things students have, I mean, they can actually do more than just Facebook or look up, God knows what they do anymore. I can't keep up with it. But Apple's made some significant announcements about their intent to pursue augmented reality, I guess the Apple way, which should be easy to use, and they're talking about glasses and various things like that, or goggles. And these devices are going to be coming out soon. They're just like anything else, when Apple introduced the laser writer, I don't know if you guys were around when that happened, but that really changed desktop publishing. And of course, the entry-level laser printer was around $4,000 or $5,000, if I recall, but the prices came down. Shoot, I have a Brother laser printer. I think I got off of eBay for $50, and so the technology cost and entry level come down. But anyhow, how we can use some of these tools is what I like is the discovery-based learning, where it's student-led sort of instruction, where they're tearing into various things. And I'll give you an example of what I used for discovery-based learning. It was really quite straightforward for that purpose. Objects modeling, one of the things I do is 3D printing, and having those 3D models, and I put targets on them so that students can learn more about that model. So not only does it give them the didactic or the hands-on experience, they can also get more information about that object or that structure or whatever it is. And so that's, I think, a really good use of the technology. AR books, we're seeing this in anatomy. I think McGraw-Hill is embedding a lot of the AR targets using their technology for augmented reality, and it makes more things in the text more readable, more engaging. The students can pursue more information, so it's really going to enhance and change how books are published, I think, augmenting it with augmented reality. Skills training, one of the things that I could see it being used for is in the STEM center, things like that, or even just in our regular laboratory sections, having AR introductions or tutorials on how to use a piece of equipment or something like that. And I think that's going to be really helpful. And it's going to be authentic, because that's what they're going to see in their workplace. I believe augmented reality is really starting to take hold in industry and business. In gamification, you're using, there are things that you can do that are unique to augmented reality that really enhance gaming. Now, virtual reality, of course, is the all inclusive and attention drawing. Augmented reality in gamification can add new components to a game, more information. One of the things I've been playing around with is if a student makes a choice, let's say picks up a card and answers, and the mere placement of the card on something, I can determine using augmented reality if their answer is correct or not. And so the student would get that feedback as like a board game or a game piece or something like that. And it's just something to think about that we can do. So the applications for using augmented, I think it does help more of an immersive type of engagement tool. It doesn't have to be all that wowing and specific, other than it's detailed and only contains information that you want the student to see or how to acquire to get other information. And it's really useful, and this all occurs in real time. So the student can hold up their technology, an iPad or an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever it is, and then whatever you had designed using Zappar, for an example, for the student to explore, to dig in deeper. In fact, that it can be easily done. So it's some examples of just using augmented reality. You hold up to various things, and it points to a target. Now, Zappar is very specific in how they implement theirs. Each of these other companies that you see there are presentations that utilize their specific implementation of augmented reality, which Apple will have their own, but my guess is it'll be really easy to use, like Zappar. So Zappar is just a tool that we can learn about how to use these, which are pretty similar across all of the different types of apps. So any time you spend in using Zappar won't be wasted, because it's that understanding on how to implement and use these technologies, and they're all pretty similar in terms of how they're actually implemented. At least that's the way I view it. And so from there, the images, one of the things I really like is having the information about a paper jump out at you. And this is something that I personally want to achieve for my students. It's more engaging, it adds more of an interest note to scientific literacy and that sort of thing. And I think it's a great tool for that purpose. And just being able to see 3D structures sort of in this augmented reality is interesting. We do, there was during one of the STEM breaks, we had the augmented reality sandbox, which I thought was a phenomenal example. That was done by the geology group. They did a wonderful job with that, and it's a perfect use for, I think, using augmented reality in such ways that really engage students. I remember looking at how many were around that booth where they were conducting this, and that was a really cool thing to do. Of course, during class, we have that classroom of the future, and we can start implementing some of the simple ideas behind Zappar and using some of the other technologies. They work together. There's ways to do this, and I'm exploring some. I would love to see what you guys are thinking of and what you're going to do in terms of exploring some of the possibilities there. So one of my examples I wanted to give is I used 3D printed models. I printed various models of viruses. What I found was that the students hadn't performed very well in previous sections, and I wanted to find something that could engage them, and maybe their grades would go up, and by engaging the model using augmented reality. So it told them more information about that experience they are already having with the 3D model. But instead of just saying, wow, it's a cool model, it's, oh, here's a model and here's the features of that model and what it does and that sort of thing. And allows them to interrogate that model on their own and student-led. I've done this now for about 5-6 sections over the past couple of years, and grades have gone up. But it's really interesting. Once I set it all up and it's done, all I do is kind of walk around and just watch them do it for that hour and 15 minutes or however long it is. And I set up examples where they can read in more, and you can see a model there with a target, a couple of targets, and all they do is they aim their technology, which was 100% compliance. And every time I've done this, it's quite interesting. I've invited folks to come watch. The group that funded for in the ITS group for this Zappar experiment was for that reason, to show them how engaging it was. And that's the other purpose, is that we want to try to get enough data that we could write a grant to expand and utilize this if it turns out to be something that the faculty thinks it's worthy of doing that. And so these are actual pictures of during class, and the students were interrogating the models, and they could work in groups of 3, 4, whatever they wanted. I even allowed students to work independently if they wanted to. There's always, it seems to be the students that prefer that, kind of cut to the chase and get out of there, that sort of thing. I don't really, it doesn't matter to me as long as they're engaged and they're learning, and it helps them to recall it later down the road. And using the model by just pointing the device to it and getting this information where you can click on the screen and get all different types of content was really desirable. And in this particular one, all I used was the widgets because it was simple. I tweak it for every semester, but I don't have to rewrite it or anything. All I do is just add more things to it, or the content changes because I didn't like it, or students commented that they'd like to see this or that. So I just gradually add to it. But that's one of the things I wanted to point out. It's really nice, is that I've learned from semester to semester that once it's set up, it's there. So you don't have to do any of that again. And then you can spend more time thinking about other content or other classes to start implementing and doing things. And I just baby steps at a time. And so they would fill out this type of information. I'd have a worksheet, and that they would use their handheld technologies to dig into it and to be able to answer questions like this. And they like that. You can see that they're engaged and they're working on it and in collaborative, and I don't have to do any of the input. Not that I'm lazy. Is the student-led type of instruction, I think, is really cool, and it really kind of worked. So what I like is it utilizes the student's own technology. It's engaging, it's collaborative, it requires critical thinking because, well, you know, all the pieces and parts are there, but they have to pull it together. And I did that by design. Some of these had papers, scientific papers that they had to read in order to extract some of the information. But the students led. In other words, in the collaborative group, someone was taking, well, I'll do this and that sort of thing, so that was the collaborative part. But they were doing their own inquiry and how, in what order and things like that to get the information, and I thought that was really, really good. So this is just one way I implemented, and it did add to improved grades for this section, and all the sections actually. The models helped improve, but adding the augmented reality with the models, it really it pushed it over the top. So I'm going to try to implement similar things to this in some of the other classes. And so you can see there's a screen dump of what you might see, and easily set. I could do that probably within 5-10 minutes if I already have the content ready to go. And the students can zoom in on any of those by just touching it on the screen, and all of it's what I decided that they should look at in order to answer questions or do things on the worksheets. So you can see pretty much the augmented reality image there is presented on the handheld device. Here's some more examples. I was just looking at the Zika virus or the West Nile virus. Allowed them to click and get more information to fill in the sheets. And some of them just had more interesting color images, and it helps them, or electron micrographs and things like that, and the different types of viruses. And they could be looking at a bacteriophage or something like that and dig into that. So I'm going to stop here. This is a good stopping point. The next one that I would like to do and present is building an example together in the pieces and parts and what to look for. Troubleshooting a contact at Zappworks if you run into some problem with your account or something like that. And one of the things I want to really stress for me is they also allow students to have a sub account. I think it costs $1, but we're included with some for this that we have. I think it's 15 student seats we get, but allows students to generate content, and that's even better. I'm exploring that in the START program, having students go in and create content using augmented reality. So that's what some of the topics we'll talk about next time. I hope you get a chance to look through that material, play some of the videos, and I've put various examples in areas. I tend to populate all of the different discipline areas as examples that you can look at. But if you have one, please post them, share them, and once they're published, anyone can use them. And that's the other aspect of this. We want to share as much as we can, and it takes the experience farther along than just our class, and that's a good thing. So thank you for your time.